And this is the PBS NewsHour. We're what your grandma is talking about when she says, I saw this on the news. With the midterms less than 2 weeks away, Republicans appear to be surging with a strong closing message from candidates who have gone from underdogs to stars of the Republican Party.
All right, do you feel better now that Saturday Night Live is on board with this red wave?
Everyone agrees.
Is it more real now? Because, listen, I can watch Fox News all day long, or I can listen to Wake Up Mid-Missouri all day long. Hey, it is. We're back to we feel very confident about taking both chambers of the House. We feel good about it, but I'm still kind of walking away a little iffy. But when I tune in Saturday Night Live on a Saturday night and they're saying it, now I'm sold, man. We are 8 days away from the election. Do you know where you are on things? I want to look at some of these other ballot measures specifically that we're voting on here in Missouri. Obviously, we know about Amendment 3. It's got a lot of folks discombobulated because of the other stuff in there. And you have people like Epen Thampi is somebody we've worked with over the years, been on the show from time to time. He does a lot of work in trying to legalize marijuana. He's all about having legalized recreational marijuana. He's against this amendment. I think that's interesting. Dan Vietz, local marijuana activist for a lot of years, also been on the show a lot of times. He's in agreement. He wants Amendment 3. There's enough stuff, and here's where I am with it. I'm like, I don't use weed. Do I really care who gets what licenses and stuff? Or do I say, hey, you know what? If we're going to do legalized marijuana, let's do it right. And there's a lot of sentiment. This is not the right way to do it. I wouldn't. Do you feel like it'll pass? Yeah.
I feel like it's going to pass.
Yeah.
I'm voting yes.
And that's the response you get a lot. It's like, silent. I'm not sure yet. And then ultimately, I'm like, I don't use weed. Why should I care? You know,
we were involved in the litigation on behalf of the proponents, so I can't say a whole lot, but I am voting yes.
That you can say.
I can say that. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. I mean, the show with Dan and Epen is really good. They had a proponent and an opponent on, I think 2 weeks ago on This Week in Missouri Politics. I mean, there's tons of good feedback from both sides. But yeah, I feel like it's going to pass. And this is really strange for me because typically, and I think Missourians are in the same place that I am, and people have tried this in the past to run just a straight no campaign. They're like, vote no on everything. And it's kind of worked in the past, and people are like, ballot measure is bad. No, 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 no. And it is really hard to get a yes because people are just mostly inclined to say, I don't want to amend the Constitution, or I want the status quo. But I think I might be voting yes on everything. This cycle, it's crazy for me. But yeah, I think I'm a yes.
So the other ones that are out there, when we look at the amendments, number 5, that's the National Guard. That's an easy yes, I think for most people. Yeah. That basically says the National Guard, they would have a little bit more autonomy. They wouldn't have to go through several layers of leadership to do what they want to do. And then Amendment 1. Have you heard about this? Probably not, because it's not real sexy, man. And it's things like this that we probably should be paying attention to. Basically, it says state treasurer can invest in higher yield bonds or more riskier bonds or something.
There was litigation over that, so yeah, I've heard of it as well. But yeah, no, it expands the ways in which the treasurer can invest money, and yeah, he can invest in municipal bonds. And so, yeah, you haven't heard a lot about that. That's one that was, I think, referred by the legislature. But I think, we'll see where that. Yes, that's right. But it hasn't had really any organized opposition as far as I'm aware.
Kansas City police funding, Amendment 4. Yes, vote gives Missouri, according to the ballot language. Who writes the ballot? Is Jay Ashcroft in there? Well, since I'm the Secretary of State, this is how I'm writing the ballot language on this.
It depends. A lot of times, there's certain provisions that allow the legislature to write it if they're referring it, but if they don't, typically it defaults to him. And yeah, if you're an initiative proponent, you turn it in, the secretary writes it. And that's really where you see a lot of the litigation, or you used to see a lot of the litigation was, I'm either unhappy because you wrote it in a way that I think, will convince people not to sign it, or I'm the other people and I think you wrote it to say like puppies and rainbows, and that's not what it's about. And so I'm going to go fight you on that as well. A famous line from one of the cases that we always use is, if you handed 10 different lawyers the pen, you'd get 10 different summaries of the ballot. Not that any of them, they could all be, because they could all be legal, right? But anyway, so yeah, you might get some different descriptions, but they're supposed to be fair.
Here's one I think we should all, without fail. By the way, I want to welcome cousin Andy into the show. Andy Humphrey.
Hi.
In for Brian Hounsworth. He does an afternoon show. And I get real leery about promoting other shows here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I'm just weird that way, even though it's all in the family. But I never hesitate to talk about Andy Humphrey's afternoon show on our sister station, KTGR. Local sports, man. And it's not just sports, it's other stuff. It's a very good show. Andy is in for Brian Hounsworth this morning. We are glad to have you here.
Well, thank you.
Should we be impressed by Mizzou's win?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
There is a win.
They're a ranked team. They beat a ranked team. It's good.
Producer Hannah is here.
Good morning.
There's Mr. John Marsh. Stephanie Bell hanging out to my left this morning.
Good morning.
My name is Branden Rathert. The one thing, and I have my sample, my official sample ballot. The one thing that everybody should positively, absolutely vote yes on, because we haven't said yes to it in years. Just as a joke.
Not as a joke, but I'm going to vote yes because it's like a protest vote.
But to see what would happen, all these people the next day would, holy cow, they passed that. Here's the question. Constitutional Convention. Shall there be a convention to revise and amend the Constitution? Everybody's going to vote no, right? I'm not quite sure what it means, but I'll just vote no. So that's the rule. You vote no on amendments and no if you didn't do your homework.
Well, it's a strange provision, and you have to think about what were the framers thinking when they were writing the Constitution in the early 60s and thinking, is there a time where we just want to throw the whole thing out the window? And so in the Constitution it says and this is really weird because it's not in a general. It says that, well, it is the general, but a general election on the first Tuesday following the first Monday in November 1962 and every 20 years thereafter. So you would think that we would vote like in 2020, but no, it's 2022, and then we won't vote again until 2042. And so it's wild. But as a conservative, I would caution folks to go read Article 12, Section 3A, because the way in which we select the delegates basically would give us not the advantage that we deserve currently.
Can you bottom line it for us, what it says?
You get 15 delegates at large, and then each senatorial district, which we have 34, I think each party gets to nominate one person, and then there's a vote. So it's very lengthy, but ultimately I think Democrats would be overrepresented at the Constitutional Convention compared to what they currently enjoy, if that makes sense. So I would be nervous. Although the idea of scrapping the Constitution is something I rather think is a good idea.
So 8 days from now when you go to the polls, shall there be a convention to revise and amend the Constitution? That's a hard yes. Please don't do that. Saturday Night Live seems to be on board. Yes, Republicans. The Republicans will take control of both chambers in the House. If Saturday Night Live is on board, I'm on board more which was actually pretty decent Saturday night. Don't get to watch it all the time. I at least like to watch Weekend Update with their opening segment featuring Herschel Walker, Dr. Oz, and Carrie Lake from Arizona. It's a pretty good episode of Saturday Night Live.
Mr. Walker, you're now within 3 points of Senator Raphael Warnock. Why is your support growing?
And that's where I don't know. See, the whole world is a mystery, ain't it? For example, a thermos, it keeps the hot things hot, but also the cold things cold. But my question is, how do it decide? So we're going to be looking into that very much.
Whatever your politics. People get mad at me all the time. When Alec Baldwin was doing the Trump impersonations, that was brilliant work. And I would play and people would get mad. Why are you making fun of Trump? I'm just playing some comedy, man, from Alec Baldwin, who did a really, really good Trump, I thought.
Which, by the way, Herschel Walker is up in all of the polls like crazy. He has not been consistently up in, at any point, and now he's suddenly surging. And I think a good point is, you don't really know about the polls whether they're going to be right on, but they do show momentum and direction. And so the fact that he is now leading is a good sign for him.
That's why one of the things we say here on the show a lot, polls for what they are worth, because I think the easiest example is we can look at the presidential polls even the day of the election 2016 and how those polling numbers did not pan out. And hopefully, we can do away with all the nastiness in politics. I think right now Republicans can win just simply by presenting facts. You don't have to criticize the other guy. You say, here's the facts, and the facts are this. Gas prices, groceries, rent, heating, fuel, everything is up. And, of course, over the past couple of days, we saw that divisive. Do you say divisiveness or divisiveness? All of a sudden, I've been hearing
Divisiveness?
I say divisiveness.
That's what I say, and all of a sudden, I hear people on the TV all of a sudden saying divisiveness. I'm like, Marsh, did you get the memo that all of a sudden we're changing the enunciation of the word? So we could do away with all of the divisiveness in politics, and obviously, man, we just saw this a couple of days ago, and it's stuff like this that breaks my heart. This is in Florida.
We're going to have some fun, and we're going to raise some money tonight for the great state of Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Governor Ron DeSantis.
That's your boy Luke Bryan, Steph.
I know. That was awesome. I was glad to see it.
Luke Bryan, country superstar, doing a concert in Florida, brings the governor there, Ron DeSantis, brings him onto stage. Now I hear him say, "We're gonna have some fun, and we're gonna make some money for charity tonight." So Luke Bryan, country superstar, brings Ron DeSantis up on stage. A lot of people on Twitter freak out. Luke, I can't believe you did that. Ron DeSantis is less than human, and you endorse him. And Luke, and he even said this in his Twitter. He said, "Listen, I usually don't respond to idiots like you." I don't think that was his exact wording, but it was something like that. So I don't respond to this stuff. He says, "My goodness, when you have an elected servant that says, 'Hey, can I come on stage so we can help raise money for a charity?' That charity being the hurricane that recently hit Florida, you get up and you help the victims of hurricane. Blows me away. Coming up, we are going to be doing the daily DC rundown with Stephanie Bell. Going to find out what's happening underneath the circus tent in Washington, D.C. What's front and center this morning, Steph?
Big day in the Supreme Court, the future of affirmative action in higher education.
Future of affirmative action, higher education, some of the things coming up in the daily DC rundown. And I also want to mention, kind of while we're talking about, the divisiveness in politics, coming up, 8:10 this morning, Erin Norman. She's a Lee Family Fellow, senior messaging strategist at the State Policy Network. She did a great piece about why people are afraid
For the record, you can go check this as well. There was a female state senator that actually carried this piece of legislation, so there were a lot of women that supported this bill. I understand people differ greatly on it.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp debate last night with challenger Stacey Abrams, and that's getting us into today's daily D.C. rundown with Stephanie Bell.
So, of course, Abrams tried to pigeonhole Kemp into into some sort of categorical denial that he wouldn't change the status quo on abortion. Kemp said, "It's not my desire to move the needle any further," and she said, "Let's be clear, he didn't say he wouldn't."
Yeah.
And so abortion, hot topic there in Georgia last night. Also a hot topic was voting rights, but I'm wondering if they focus more on abortion, and Stacey Abrams wanted to focus more on abortion because what we know from the data coming out of Georgia is that more people than ever have voted in early voting, and that voting numbers are way up.
Jim Crow 2.0, voter suppression. People won't be record turnout already in Georgia.
People are also comparing the campaign strategies of various candidates as Republicans make a surge trying to explain what's going on. And up in Michigan, Tudor Dixon is on the TV, is doing a bus tour, is all out there. And Whitmer was kind of in the background, just saying, in the lead, but just, if I just don't mess up, maybe I can hang tight. And that race is getting very close. And people are saying it's her TV appearances and her bus tour and everything else that's propelling her forward. And so now, is it too late for Whitmer to do the same thing? And I think Dixon told the AP, I think our momentum's in the right direction and coming at just the perfect time. And yeah, there's that thing in campaigns that you don't want to peak too early. But at the same time, because most states have early voting, you also can't get in the race too late, right? So
there's a lot to be said. You want to peak at the right time. You want, at the right time. I was just thinking, you were talking about on Missouri amendments, your strategy is on all the amendments, just vote yes all the way down. Maybe people could say the same on ballots for offices. Really, just vote R all the way down because it's the economy. Don't care about the office or the candidate. R's. It's the economy. It's inflation. It's your bank account.
It is. Today, though, on the Supreme Court might take front and center stage here right before the election, future of affirmative action in higher education. So we heard was it last week that we heard that John Marsh didn't get into the CIA because he's white?
Yep.
I think that's what we heard from him.
Yeah, that was your story, right? We got it right. Yeah.
Well, the two universities at issue here are the University of North Carolina and Harvard. There's a long-held precedent that allows race to be a factor in college admissions. That case is on the table. Of course, the court is much different today than it was even 6 years ago when the court last looked at this. Lower courts actually upheld the admissions programs at UNC and North Carolina, but now folks are saying, look, it needs to go away. Race should not be a factor in college admissions, and saying that the colleges and universities can use other factors to get a diverse student body that includes like socioeconomic status. And they said also if you eliminate like the alumni preference, that could, seek to give you a more diverse student body. Other schools say, well, if we eliminate it completely, or the other side says if we eliminate it completely, you're not going to get a student body that looks like America.
By the way, we should cover that some more. Let's do that at 6:35, affirmative action. And who does affirmative action help the most, according to MSNBC? We'll have that here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri coming up 5 minutes from now. Trick-or-treating forecast looks pretty nice. Maybe some drizzle today, but tonight, few clouds up to 66.
So the first time you hear the concept of Halloween when you're a kid, your brain can't even process the information. You're like, what is this? What did you say? So what did you say about giving out candy? Who was giving out candy? Everyone that we know is just giving out candy? Are you kidding me? When is this happening? Where? Why? Take me with you. I gotta be a part of this. I'll do anything that they want. I can wear that.
Jerry Seinfeld, Halloween today. Chance of drizzle before 10 a.m. Otherwise, partly sunny, and then by trick-or-treat time, temps right about 60 degrees. No rain. And it was funny because I remember as a kid, one of the considerations you had to have, because the weather, no matter what part of the country that you live in, the weather on October 31st, it could be cold or it could be really warm, and you had to figure out your costume. It was weather dependent.
I was going to say, there's nothing worse than your mom making you wear your like big winter coat underneath your Halloween costume. That was always the worst as a kid.
Oh, we have photos of my kids, like hat, gloves, scarves, just frozen. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, and it was miserable. But is there anything worse than being in a costume and just being sweaty?
Like the year that I went as the lion from The Wizard of Oz, and it was like 97 degrees come trick-or-treat time. This when we were in Northern California, Beale Air Force Base.
Yeah, and now one of our traditions is the Southern Boone Y has a 5K, so I'm always thinking like, okay, can I run a 5K? And by run, I mean walk. A 5K in my Halloween costume.
Stephanie actually has her Halloween costume on this morning.
I do.
Yeah, it's a flight suit. Yeah, looks good.
Thanks. But these were all considerations because I can move freely in it, so I can do the 5K, but you could also like layer thermal underneath if you need to. So yes, I have learned my lesson.
Good work, Goose.
I asked her this morning where her Joe Biden aviators were.
I have some at home, but he's ruined them for me.
Man, Joe Biden is ruining a lot of stuff. So over the weekend, here's one of the things. He said, remember the tragic events, January 20th, 2021? Remember that word he kept repeating that day?
Unity?
Unity. Unity. We need to come together.
Remember last time around with that other fellow, we kept hearing about infrastructure week.
So more opportunities to take digs at the other guy. That's not unity, man. Marsh, you remember what your last Halloween costume was that you ever wore? Mm-hmm. No. For real. Former Mizzou head football coach. Very nice. By the way, you can see Stephanie Pell in her Top Gun flight suit. By watching the show, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. So big couple of cases today in front of SCOTUS, and this has to do it has to do with college admissions.
It does. So, and it involves two separate universities. The cases were consolidated, one Harvard and one University of North Carolina. And there's been a long precedent where the court has affirmed that universities can use race as not the deciding factor, but a factor in admissions. And it's interesting because it's not just, a white versus black issue. In Harvard, the issue is the studies and the data show that Asian Americans have been underrepresented, and by the admissions policy, that there are Asian Americans that aren't getting into Harvard that otherwise would. And so the lower courts both affirmed said the admissions policies were okay. The cases are now up before the Supreme Court. They will be argued today. And of course, those challenging the college admissions say the Constitution forbids the use of race in college admissions, and that there are other things that race-neutral factors that universities could use to get a diverse student body, including getting rid of or socioeconomic status might give you a diverse student body, and then also alumni preferences. So if your dad went there, usually you get in, or whatever, your mom went there. But then other folks are saying, look, we need a diverse student body, and the only way to get there is to include the race factor.
And I wonder, when they say diverse, do they mean diverse by We got to have 50% women, 50% dudes, or we got to have 18% black students. We got to have 12% Asian students. I mean, what do they mean? The diversity, should it, for example, we go to Colombia, U.S. Census Bureau indicates, I think, roughly 16% of the population is black in Colombia. Does that mean like the city council? It's got to be 16% black and 1% Asian. And I mean, should everything be diverse? How about this idea for diversity in college? Instead of going on test scores, like, let in really dumb people. There's diversity. That would work.
I do go. I think ultimately the Supreme Court is gonna get rid of affirmative action in higher education. I think that they're gonna go that way. I have some sensitivity, especially in institutions of higher education, because I think you're trying to learn. You're at a formidable time in your upbringing, and definitely, international students of different socioeconomic status, students of different race. I mean, they bring to the conversation something different, right, than you. And I think, you do yourself a disservice if you go to a university of people who all lived an identical life to you, and then you go into the workplace where it probably is not going to be that. And I saw that a little bit at university, kids coming from a high school where there wasn't much diversity and then going to a university and kind of having a bit of culture shock. Oh my gosh, not everyone thinks the same way I do and not everyone looks the same way I do. And, we want to prepare people for the real world. I do think there are different ways, like the proponents or the challengers in this case have identified. But I think diversity on a number of levels is important in higher ed. But whether or not we get there from race or from, other factors, I think is the question. And
do we have the government say, well, it's going, but then I guess the bigger question, who's saying what is diverse? Is it based on, the number of people that wear glasses? I mean, you can just create all kinds of different subcategories. I'm not trying to belittle why they do these programs, but it's, for example, you could take like the mathematics of the City Council of Columbia, for example, and say, well, it's just not diverse enough or it's over diverse. John, you know about diversity. You tried getting into a career and you didn't have the right skin color.
Well, and I remember when I first, I think, moved back to Jefferson City, there was a time period where they had 10 city council people and there were no women, not one. And I'm like, who, typically that stuff doesn't bother me, but not one. I'm thinking, what is going on? But the solution there was to find some folks in the community, some women who were qualified and interested in running, and encourage them to go ahead and run. And, now it's more diverse, but I don't know that it really matters, but it does seem weird. It seemed weird to me when I got there and I was like, there are no like mothers, family, people raising families. I mean, there were dads, I'm assuming, but it felt weird.
And you can look at the Columbia City Council. You have Betsy Peters, Mayor, Barbara Buffalo, Pat Fowler, Andrea Weiner. So 4 of the 7 city council members in the city of Columbia are female. Tiffany Cross, here's what MSNBC. Here's who affirmative action helps the most, according to Tiffany Cross at MSNBC.
And the biggest beneficiary of affirmative action, white women.
I don't understand her thinking there. White women benefit the most from affirmative action. Off the text, 874-9390. Brad brings home a really good point. Colleges sure don't seem to be looking for diversity in thought. That's Nathan. Brad, how about political diversity? Political diversity in the universities. Gordon, I want the most qualified. Don't care about the color. Any inclination to like how the Supreme Court might rule on this?
People are saying that because of the makeup of the court. I mean, the court watchers are saying
they're stereotyping.
They're thinking, well, and I think on the heels of Dobbs, because what people are saying is, there's this case that's been around forever. They've looked at this before, but and so there's, some preference for, there's a strong preference for going with precedent and stare decisis and all of that, but they just overturned Roe. And so given, I think, the Dobbs decision, I think people are like, they're going to overturn this too. And then the liberals go down, well, then once we get rid of affirmative action in, higher ed, it's going to be, employment next and this next. And we're just, and down the rabbit hole we go.
It's like you're creating slots in in a popsicle tray. You got to have one of this color and one of that color, and if you have 87 slots, you got to have it's got to be just right. Coming up 7:25-ish, we're going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah. 8:25 Morning Bell, and I love the Morning Bell because it's business news, and it's always Stephanie Bell's got this little just a twist to it. And by the way, these stories are not easy to find. I will say that because every time Stephanie's gone and I'm trying to find a Morning Bell, I'm like, how the heck does she do this, man? I can't find this stuff. 8 days in front of the election. Yesterday, this is CNN. Dana Bash talking to Republican Senator Rick Scott.
So which battleground states do you think Republicans will win on Election Day? How many Senate seats will the GOP control next year?
How many seats do you think they'll have? How did he answer the question? We're going to cover that coming up 5 minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
So which battleground states do you think Republicans will win on Election Day? How many Senate seats will the GOP control next year?
How many seats will the GOP control next year? What are the battleground states? That's Dana Bash talking to Republican Senator from Florida, Rick Scott. How did he answer the question 8 days away from the election?
We're going to get 52 plus. Herschel Walker will win in Georgia. We're going to keep all 21 of ours. Oz is going to win against Fetterman in Pennsylvania. Adam Laxalt will win in Nevada. But I think we have every reason to believe we can pick up with Blake Master in Arizona, with Don Bolduc. I'll be going to New Hampshire today. I think Don Bolduc has every reason to believe he's going to win. But we've got shots with Tiffany Smiley in Washington, Joe Day in Colorado, Leo Levy in Connecticut.
And even in the Northwest, there's some races like in Oregon and Washington that are like, holy cow. And I don't know if you've ever been through Oregon or Washington, or you just know by watching the news how incredibly far left progressive. Remember all of that violence from a couple of years ago from the far left, all that where they were taking over police stations and town squares. That was Washington and Oregon. Places like that, Republicans have some chances of winning. So Rick Scott, former governor of Florida, current U.S. senator representing the state of Florida, he says 52 in the Senate. Do you like that? Should he? And, of course, he's a Republican. He's supposed to say good things. He's not going to come on there and say, man, we're screwed. But I think that's reasonable, 52.
I've heard some people saying 53.
53, 54, maybe.
I've not heard 54.
It's almost like the conversations, man, we'd love to have 60. How about 60-40? We also heard that when it came to congressional seats in Missouri, didn't we? Want 7-1, and we knew it wasn't possible because there's something called reality. So that's what's happening there. And then looking at the latest polls, and we look at some of our races, Eric Schmidt seems that's still, I mean, nothing changed there. You look at the latest poll numbers, Mark Alford. I don't know that there's actually been any official polling on that, but that should be an easy one. Sam Bushman, Dave Griffith, Blaine Luetkemeyer, just none of these, when we look on a federal level, none of these that really should give Republicans anything to be scared about. Do you feel like we're being silly every time we say, now don't forget, be careful tonight because kids are going to be trick-or-treating? You ever feel like you're being silly? Like, I know we say this, we say it every year, and we say the same things over and over. But you feel like you have to? You feel silly?
I don't feel silly.
Saying it.
I mean, it's just a good reminder. I mean, not everyone, Halloween is not a big deal for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, not that you would necessarily forget, but generally.
What are all these people out here doing in costumes, begging from door to door?
Well, I had to wonder on Saturday morning, running a 5K through a neighborhood, like in weird costumes, like the people who were like, what is going on?
Can you just imagine sitting down with your morning coffee and looking out your window and seeing a pumpkin and a tiger run by your run down your street?
Bunch of zombies chasing a Santa Claus or something.
Yeah, just right through the middle of neighborhoods. And I'm like, some people are very confused this morning. But tonight, no, I mean, it's important. There's going to be tons of kids, and kids are so excited that, they're not that they're misbehaving, but the normal, oh, look both ways. They're like, I see that house has full-size candy bars. I'm there.
There's a line at that house. That must be a good one. And they can't see so well in the mask. And then if you have those parents that are, super safety conscious, and they make you, because that's the other thing, when it's really cold, you got to put your winter coat on and then put on your Halloween costume over that. The other thing that's about almost just as bad is when your parents make you put reflective stripes on your Superman costume. Come on, man. Superman didn't have reflective stripes on his cape.
Well, and I wonder, too, of course, I'm not a parent, but there's always that Facebook post that circulates every year. It's like, check your kid's candy for drugs, right? But with the whole fentanyl thing being really bad right now, is that more of a concern this year? And, in previous years, I just roll my eyes at that Facebook post and move on, but I wonder if it's more of a concern this year for parents.
I don't know, because this was happening even when Marsh and I were kids. Remember, it's been going on for years. Whenever you get home with your candy, make sure mom and dad, they go through your candy, make sure they test everything. And it used to be, even back in the day, you had hospitals, John, that would, hey, bring your candy here, we'll x-ray it for you. And Halloween, it's like the first day of school for kids, because kids on the first day of school, they like lose their minds. They're out of it, right? Because they're just excited, back at school, new clothes. And it's like Halloween. It's free candy door to door, and they get to pretend there's something that they're not. They lose their mind. So just, be a little bit extra careful if you're driving through neighborhoods tonight during Halloween.
Marissa on our live video feed on the Facebook page says that it is more of a concern for her this year as a parent.
Really? With the drugs in the fentanyl?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Something to think about. We were talking Friday. There's never been, I don't think, any documented cases of that ever happening. But as a parent, you go, I don't care what the stats say. It's like, I don't care if officials tell me there's inflation or not. I have this real fear about what's happening. Coming up here a little bit after 7 o'clock, maybe some movement on those Capitol Avenue properties in Jefferson City. We're covering that 7:10 this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
And this is the PBS NewsHour. We're what your grandma is talking about when she says, I saw this on the news. With the midterms less than 2 weeks away, Republicans appear to be surging, with a strong closing message from candidates who have gone from underdogs to stars of the Republican Party.
All right, I feel much better now that cultural icon Saturday Night Live is on board with this red wave, which we felt really good. Listen, May, we felt really good about the red wave, and then came the Roe v. Wade decision, and then spent a summer on pins and needles, and I think now that fall has arrived, everybody feeling better that Republicans are on the way to help in the Senate and in the U.S. House of Representatives.
I'm feeling great.
Good. I feel better now that Saturday Night Live is on. Saturday Night Live was actually, did you see any of this Saturday night?
I did.
So Saturday Night Live, and I get it. I haven't watched it in years. It sucks. It's not funny anymore. It leans too far one way or the other. I enjoy it most time. It's comedy. I don't care that they pick at the people that I would vote for in most elections. It's comedy. I'm not triggered by it. And it's hit and miss. Sometimes it's very entertaining. Sometimes it's...
Most of the time it's not.
Sometimes it's not.
But it's interesting when they profile people, like what they choose to hype up, I think, is my favorite. And I think they got it. It was funny. The cold open was funny.
Has anybody, people like Stephen Colbert, by the way, I haven't seen his show on CBS for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just don't stay up that late. And number two, I don't like his politics. But I used to love watching him when he was on Comedy Central. Even though his political affiliation was no different, he did a good job of lampooning politics, specifically conservatives, and I consider myself an independent-leaning conservative. I didn't care. It was comedy. I don't watch him now because I don't need a steady drumbeat of that stuff, why I suck and why I'm horrible because I voted for Trump and I'm racist because my skin is white. No, I don't need to hear that. But Stephen Colbert has a new show on Comedy Central, but it's animated cartoons. It's the news, but it's animated. Has anybody seen this or know what it's called?
I've never even heard of that.
Maybe somebody could look on the Google real quick. Or I could have been prepared and come in knowing what the show is.
Are they worried for Hannah's generation that they won't watch regular news? So they're like, hey, maybe they'll watch SpongeBob news.
The Generation Z.
I like how Brandon sits here and goes, maybe someone will Google it, as if he's not talking to me.
I
You don't have a computer right in front of you. As if you don't have a computer right in front of you, right?
Exactly. Thank you, Cousin Andy.
Tuning out the news.
Thank you, Andy. And I appreciate you getting the hint and researching that.
Toon.
Oh.
Tuning out.
It's kind of hard to not get that hint. Subtlety is not your strong suit.
If you want to see me get really mad, ask me a question that you could Google. Seriously, angry. You didn't see me Googling. I don't Google for other people. No, thank you.
That's like the real life version of getting a text with nothing but question marks in it from Stephanie.
Do you know their phone number? Are you kidding me? You texted me that on a phone. Just freaking Google it. Right? I mean, seriously.
Well, here's the thing. I get what you're saying because a lot of times I'll ask somebody, I'll say, do you know offhand the answer to this? Instead of burying myself in a computer looking on Google, I'll ask somebody, do you offhand happen to know this?
Well, and Brandon, you and I, our desks are right across from each other. And how many times do you and I ask each other a question and then we immediately say, well, I guess I could just Google it.
Yeah. But we don't. Well, you used to really get on. I used to work with this old news director. He was a young guy. It was 10, 15 years ago. His name was Jeff Knox. And I would ask him something. And the guy, he was pretty intelligent, but anytime I'd ask him something, hey, do you know? And he'd go, oh, yeah, I know. And then he would get on the computer. I'm like, well, you don't know. You're just looking it up. You don't know the answer to that question. You can find it. Do you know?
It's all about using your resources. I really don't know what people did before Google was accessible in your pocket. I mean, how did people survive? Truthfully.
Right? Or dads just did that dad thing where they just said the number. They were like 742 and they just said it really confidently and you couldn't check and they were most likely wrong. But you were just like, okay, that's the answer. Like, you're the smartest person and you just assumed they were right. They weren't.
That's a lot of misinformation right there.
By the way, I had a fact check that got fat checked.
Oh, boy.
I did a fact check Friday. Jerry Lee Lewis, there were reports that he was dead. Well, he wasn't. TMZ falsely reported that he was dead. But then...
Yikes.
Then he died?
Then he did die.
Oh, God. Yeah, I saw those posts start coming out over the weekend, and I was like, oh, these are still left over from, a couple days ago. And then I looked at the timestamp and the date. I was like, oh, no, I think this is the real deal.
No. So when your fact check gets fact checked by fact, somebody else prominently died over the past couple of days.
Oh, yeah. Jules Bass, and he's the co-producer of, he was 87, and he produced those, they're not...
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman.
And they're not,
claymation. They were claymation
I don't
Christmas
think are they claymation? They're like puppets or something, but they're the ones you always see.
It's not really claymation. It doesn't seem like claymation to me. It might be claymation.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I thought was claymation.
Okay, but those, they're iconic. They're always on TV, so he died.
So whenever the Christmas specials would come on, you'll see the name Jules Bass. And you see it every year. I don't know how old those things are, John. I'm guessing they were on the TV even when you were a kid.
64, yeah.
1964.
Google says it's stop motion animation.
Oh, okay,
Stop motion animation. Okay.
From 1964.
Oh, and then and I didn't know this, but the drummer, speaking of dead people.
What a transition.
I know. Wow. Drummer for the Dead Kennedys. And I think also did some drum work for the Foo Fighters or something like that. Died. And the only reason I mention is they happen to be from St. Louis. And I guess if you're a big fan of the Dead Kennedys or that kind of punk rock type of music, he died too. All right. Where are we? 8 days until the election. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell, Andy Humphrey is in for Brian Hounsworth. There is producer Hannah John Marsh. I am Branden Rathert. 8 days away from the election. SNL, Saturday Night Live. So that's why I'm on board, man. They're saying the Republicans are gaining, and polling, for what it's worth, is indicating that Saturday Night Live would be accurate. Did a little bit of lampooning on Dr. Oz. By the way, did you hear what Dr. Oz did to John Fetterman? We talk about the rhetoric and politics and how everybody needs to simmer down a little bit and not go and stab the spouses of people that are sitting in U.S. Congress right now. You should hear what Dr. Oz did. Had a John Fetterman.
I haven't heard this, I don't think.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I don't think he did anything wrong, but it's like, man, that's why I don't play the game. Well, that and I ain't very smart. But I don't like the game, man. SNL lampooning Dr. Oz.
Now, Dr. Oz, you've caught up to your opponent, John Fetterman, recently, surprising many in the media.
Yeah, I sure have. Let's remember, I was a long shot, Judy. But I always told myself, you can win this election if you're honest, if you're fair, and if your opponent has a debilitating medical emergency.
Oof.
Right? And by the way, and Dr. Oz and everybody else who is pointing out accurately the health issues with John Fetterman, I have no issue with that. People say, oh, my God, you're making fun of a hero. No, the guy shouldn't be running for office and people shouldn't be voting for him. You have a health issue like a stroke and you have those things and you put yourself out in the public light. That's what comes with it. I don't know that anybody has been mean in their intent in talking about Fetterman. I think pointing out facts and just like, dude just shouldn't be running for office. He really should. And these people behind the scenes that are saying, John, go out here and do this debate and say this. It's horrible. It's despicable. Dr. Oz, John Fetterman doing a big fundraiser the other night. So Dr. Oz had his teams, they had big screen TVs being pulled on trailers. And they circled where this fundraiser was happening, just playing the entire debate on loop. So your reaction to this, see, that's what I'm. So what is it like? That's harsher. That's politics. That's slick.
Yeah, it's slick. I mean, political trolling and like campaign, you gotta laugh. Like, some people, it's just part of it. And you put yourself out there. And, my favorite was like I think she took it with a good laugh. But like when Claire McCaskill was running and they called her Air Claire, and like the guy with the lights for the airline, she'd get off her bus and he'd pop out. They just followed her around and just trolled her at parades and stuff. It's clever. And, like if you put yourself out there, it's going to happen.
We get trolled here all the time.
Oh yeah, people are very concerned today.
We've had some good trolls today, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, Stephanie is getting some love on the texter.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of trolls this week. People say we're not talking about COVID because of the millions of dollars that we get from Pfizer.
Our most recent troll that pops up on a daily basis, he's awfully quiet this morning.
Yeah. What's really good is and Andy Humphrey, by the way, who's in for Brian Houseworth, hosts a great afternoon sports talk show, KTGR, weekday afternoons. Is big show, 4 to 6. Pretty cool because it's not just sports. I dig that. I forgot what I was going to ask. Where were we?
We're talking about trolls.
Do you want me to Google
trolls,
what you were going to ask?
Do you get trolled on your show, and how do you handle it?
Yeah. Every once in a while. But we make fun of when we screw up on things.
Oh, we do the
time.
same thing
Yeah.
here.
No, we emphasize it.
You emphasize it, but getting trolls, sometimes you just respond with kindness or nothing or whatever crazy harebrained idea they have, like, well, you're not talking about COVID because you get money from Pfizer. We just type back, yeah, that's exactly why we're not talking about it, because of the money we get from Pfizer. Yeah. You're right.
Depending on where the troll comments are taking place, other Wake Up family members will have our back and come after the troll as well.
874-93. Now, as a matter of fact, we should change our segment from listener mailbag to like the troll bag. Troll mailbag or something. Coming up a little bit later this morning, we're going to be joined by Erin Norman, who actually, and I love this piece she did. I saw it was actually reprinted in the Drudge Report. It was in The Hill. But her name is Erin Norman. She's with the Lee Family Institute, and she's with the State Policy Network. But she wrote this great piece about people being more and more afraid to talk about their political ideations. I'm like, yeah, that's right, because it's so crazy out there. We talk about these people with forked tongues and the insults and the things that happen. Yeah, I could see why some people would be afraid to talk about unless you're sitting like at the Columbia Pachyderm meeting on a Friday, and where you're in friendly territory. I could see that. Also, coming up 7:25, we're going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah. What do you have for us today, Hannah?
Actually, it's on the topic of trolling. Had some local entities trolling each other over the weekend.
Oh, and by the way, the Capitol Avenue properties, Jefferson City, those weren't trolled, were they? But there was some talk.
The city is
the city is trolling.
Calling people's bluff.
All right. Good morning, 7:25-ish, which means it's
7:26.
time for What's Hot with Hannah.
We've been talking about trolls a lot this morning on the show because Stephanie's getting some love on the texter. And we've actually been getting an increased amount of... Okay, you done listening?
Interns.
Oh, dang, interns. We've actually been getting an increased amount of trolling lately. I don't know what it is. The Wake Up fam's been a little cranky.
Well, one's a Democrat lawmaker who's begging to come on the show, and we've said no because you have nothing interesting to tell us, so he trolls us on social medias.
Yeah, he just comments talking points trying to get us to argue with him, basically. But what's great is he's just driving our engagement on our live video feed. So our views have been really good lately, which is kind of nice. But there was a local police department that had an epic troll over the weekend. And Stephanie, it was actually the Ashland Police Department. Did you see this?
I did, and I'm not surprised. They're very good.
So the Ashland Police Department put up a Facebook post over the weekend, and it said, make sure you check your kids' candy this Halloween. Here's a photo from a report we took last year when our victim found the Hallsville, Missouri Police Department in their son's candy bar. And it's a photo of a Hallsville Police Department police badge photoshopped into like a Snickers bar. So the Ashland Police Department is getting a lot of points from me this week for that troll. Of course, I'm from Centralia. Centralia and Hallsville are kind of rivals just because they're, a 10-minute drive away from each other. So I can support a good Hallsville troll every now and then.
Is this posted on our Facebook page?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to look for it. Sounds funny. That's What's Hot with Hannah. We do that every morning about 7:25-ish here on 93.9, the Eagle and 104.5 News Radio 950, KWOS. Coming up, speaking of troll, we continue with the trolling theme. I think so we've got a police department that's trolled another police department in What's Hot with Hannah. We're getting trolled this morning. Got a Democrat lawmaker who's always trolling us on social media, which is fine. We're getting a lot of not love on our text this morning. How would you best phrase these, Hannah?
Some critical comments from the Wake Up fam, maybe.
Oh, which is fine. And by the way, and people say stuff, we might just stop and take a look at it because we want to understand first. But when people say things, well, like you're not talking about COVID because of Pfizer. Yeah, that's exactly why. So, yeah, we're just getting a lot of just, and then this. Are you going to buy a Powerball ticket tonight?
I already have one.
How much is Powerball? Is it like 700 million or?
Are you asking me something that can be Googled?
Marsh just knows this off the top of his head. It's $1 billion. $1 billion.
I've never bought a Powerball ticket.
Oh, we will buy them.
It's a good idea. I don't buy them when it's only $10 million. That kind of money is beneath me. $1 billion. I'm buying a ticket. Coming up, did an entire city just troll some folks here in mid-Missouri? It's coming up 5 minutes from now here on the show.
Those last couple of years, trick-or-treating, getting a little too old for it. Still out there, going through the motions. Bing bong, come on, lady, let's go. Halloween doorbells, candy, let's pick it up in there. Come to the door, they always ask you those same stupid questions. What are you supposed to be? I'm supposed to be done by now. You want to move it along with the Three Musketeers? I got 18 houses on this block, sweetheart.
Jerry Seinfeld. Weather tonight should be, so I know it kind of looks dumpy right now. We do have some sporadic drizzle. That should be done like by 10, 11 o'clock this morning. Partly sunny, 66. Trick-or-treating time when the sun goes down. Temps right about 60 degrees. Hope everybody's excited. Good morning. Welcome to the show. Be careful. Drive slow. Make sure your kids are wearing all that stuff that makes Halloween not fun. Winter coat, reflective stripes on your outfits.
You know, I heard something this weekend that I hadn't heard before, but it sounded familiar. In St. Louis, did you have to tell a joke to get a piece of candy?
Yeah. You had to earn that free candy.
Not just trick or treat.
No, so you would do, trick or a treat. You had to do a trick like a stupid human trick, or you'd have to tell a joke.
I heard that. I think that's fun. I would like that if someone showed up and told me like a silly Halloween joke.
Yeah, that was that was enacted as a law in like the 70s. Mm-hmm. It was never a law, but it was a thing. Is that not a thing? Right. Because in St. Louis County, a little bit more conservative, they said, you can't just be giving out stuff for free. Earn it. And so St. Louis County said, you got to do a stupid human trick or tell a joke.
And then my next question was, well, can you just tell the same joke at every house? And they were like, you could try, but then your friends would start like giving you, grief of like not being original. So you had to have a couple.
Was this a thing in your day?
No,
really?
We didn't tell jokes.
Is this a regional thing? Seriously, let us know. 874-9390, 874-9390. I thought that was a universal. Yeah. Hannah, when you were trick-or-treating, did you have to earn?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah, you had to have a joke, or as a matter of fact. So I had a trick and a joke in my stupid human trick. I took a toothpick and I could put the toothpick in my mouth and between like my tongue and my lip, and I could push the toothpick up into my nostril.
Gross.
It makes sense.
Nostril dance.
It makes sense, actually.
All right, let's move forward. There's John Marsh. Happy Halloween to you too. Producer Hannah is here.
Hang on, I got to go get a toothpick.
I don't know why I thought that. I'll do it.
Not on me. I ain't doing it.
You can find me a toothpick, man. I'll do it. Stephanie Bell, who is she's dressed as Maverick today, sporting the flight suit, which you can see if you get onto our YouTube channel. You can watch the show, behind the scenes stuff. It's pretty cool.
I'm not dressed as Maverick. I'm dressed as like the second lady, the Admiral's daughter. Because, the lady from the first movie apparently didn't look so good.
Kelly McGillis?
Yeah. And so she didn't get asked back. So this weekend people are like, which one are you? I'm like, oh, I'm the hot one, the second one that, that aged better than the other one. I forgot their names.
It looks good on you. We were talking about, as a matter of fact, maybe we'll do this coming up like at 7:50. Right before 8 o'clock. We do the listener mailbag from time to time. I think we should do one this morning, but focus only on people are hating on us this morning. I'm like, man, what did we do? And it's fine. As a matter of fact, from time to time here on the show, we'll say, what is it that it's like Festivus, going back to Seinfeld. Remember the Seinfeld episode, the Festivus episode. Festivus is where you air grievances. And from time to time, we'll tell people, go ahead and air your grievances about the show here by sending us a text at 874-9390. And you're always free to do that. It's a little, and we really do appreciate it, because we read what you're saying. We're like, oh, okay, there might be something to that. You might be right. But when you're sending them unsolicited, it makes me wonder, like, what happened today? All of a sudden, nobody likes us. We're getting trolled, and people are saying mean things.
They're not mean. I mean, people are offended that I might vote yes on more than one amendment on that you can't be a conservative and vote yes on a lot of the ballot measures. And in particular, they have questions about Amendment 3 and that they're, it's constitutional. You're putting marijuana in the Constitution. But here's a point of clarification. Oh, no.
Marsh, you see what Hannah brought into the studio here?
The voters put medical marijuana in the Constitution last cycle. So if you're going to change it, you got to change the Constitution again. Anyway, now we have, it's a fancy toothpick. I don't think I want to see this. We should do this during the break so people have to tune in.
You said you would do it if I found a toothpick.
I said I would do it.
That looks like an injury.
And can I say, so back in the day, so Hannah, and this is funny because we talk about the, generational differences, but or was this a regional thing? But yeah, growing up in St. Louis, it was expected whenever you went trick-or-treating. And do your kids have to do that tonight? Let us know. Send us a text, 874-9390. But it was widely accepted. You had a joke, or we would call them stupid human tricks, just ripping off stuff from David Letterman. But you had to do something. You had to do a trick or give a treat in the way of a joke in order to get your bit of honey or your Reese's peanut butter cup. In your years as a child, you never had to do that.
No.
And you trick-or-treated JC?
Yep.
Hannah?
I don't recall having to do that in Centralia.
All right. Marsh? Yeah?
Is it a regional thing or is it an old guy thing?
Thanks, Biden. Do you mean both? Like old guy thing and a regional thing? I'm wondering, is that a regional thing or is it just something from a bygone era? Because a lot of times, even the people at the door, they don't want to hear your joke or see your stupid human trick.
I do.
They've seen them all by that point. Get them in and out. Get it. It's like working at a restaurant. Burn and turn. Burn the food. Turn that table out. Get the next one in. It's the same thing when kids are trick-or-treating. So we're talking about trolls. Did an entire city just troll its residents regarding the Capitol Avenue properties?
I don't know that it's a troll. I think they're calling people's bluff. And so I think with the Capitol Avenue properties, and I'm one of those people, I think they should be saved. I don't want them to be demolished. And the city has said, hey, it's going to be really, really expensive to rehab these properties. And people are like, but we want to save them. And the city's saying, but who's going to save them? And so the city actually put out a release I think on Friday and said, hey, here is this agreement and you don't have much time. And they put a form of this proposal guarantee agreement. You basically have to put money in escrow, sign this agreement that says you're an interested party. And and they've listed the properties that are kind of available. And there's different amounts ranging from $5,000 to almost $12,000 that then you would have to deposit with your interested party agreement. And if they get enough interest, they said they will put those properties out to bid. But if they don't get any interest, those properties are coming down. And you only have until, November 30th, which, I mean, that seems kind of, seeing as, John, they've been sitting there for how many years? 12 or more. And I wish, 30 days seems like a little bit short for folks to, think, okay, I am interested and I have the money to do it.
So why is it, and I want to go back to some things, KOMU Channel 8 a couple of weeks ago, we're chatting with some folks regarding these Capitol Avenue buildings in Jefferson City.
Not everybody's going to want to save all of them, and that's okay too. We just need to make sure that we put forth the best effort of allowing people to save them if they want to.
I think as much as possible the buildings should be saved. The history of the street gives it a lot of character. You think about what's come before you, you see architectural details that you're not going to see anywhere else.
So is it the historical aspect, just, hey, it's old, and the architecture, we can't see this any place else, we want to keep the architecture?
Yeah, it has some meaning. I mean, you look at that street. If you're over down by the old MSP or down by the federal courthouse, and you look down, you see the Capitol, and just the uniqueness of the properties is something that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And so, I do think, and I brought this up before, I do think there's a middle ground here in that, in the process of the demolition, to make sure that they're well documented, which I think they all are. But are there bits and pieces of the properties that could be salvaged that then, when we're doing new builds, could be incorporated as a nod to the properties that were once there. And that might be a cheaper option. But I think there are some that are in better condition than others. And I do hope some of them are saved. But, they list on the city's Facebook page, they have the escrow amount and the repair estimate, and then the addresses and the agreement for anybody who's interested. But it's a little bit of like CYA, like the city is saying, hey, you show up every meeting and say you want history. Well, let's see, put your money where your mouth is. And either, you show up with the money and tell us you're interested in rehabbing these things, or find people who will, or they're coming down. And I think they're tired of hearing people just say, save the property for history with no investment. And I think they're
buy the property,
Yeah.
Not just save it, buy the property.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to come to a head, and I think the city then is, covering themselves when they come down. They say, "Hey, we gave you a chance. You didn't come forward, and so we've got to move on here."
All right. More importantly, we got some responses regarding trick or treat. Did you have to tell a joke or what? Is this a regional thing? We have some of those, and maybe we should do a listener mailbag coming up like 5 minutes from now. Do some of the good trolling stuff that we've been getting, and some answers regarding, do kids still have to trick or treat? And Hannah brought my trick as a kid is I could put a toothpick in my mouth and make my nostril dance. Hannah's brought us one. So maybe we can do this on camera coming up just a few minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 90.
get letters.
All right, we don't get any letters. We get
so many letters.
Texts.
A whole bunch of letters.
Facebook messages.
I'd even read mail from a cow.
Occasionally we get an email, too. You can also hit us up at Twitter at Stephanie S. Bell, at Rathert Branden, and at producer_Hannah. Marsh is out there, too, I think, on the KWOS one for Marsh, if you want to find him on Twitter. Welcome to the show. Listener mailbag. Is there anything... there's a couple here. So Marsh and I got to wondering, and I didn't even know this, but Stephanie Bell had asked, so you heard talk that in some areas of Missouri, it's kind of almost required that you tell a joke or do a trick to get your treat. And we got to wondering, is this a generational thing or is it more of a geography thing? Because, Marsh, you did this, right? Yeah, and that's what I did, too. Steve says, in Benton County 40 years ago, trick-or-treat was more like low-key extortion. If the house didn't give a treat, they got tricked with toilet paper in the trees. Also, the older group was expected to drag an old outhouse into town and set it on fire on Main Street. Hannah, isn't that what you guys used to do in Centralia, too?
No.
Okay.
Well, I should say I didn't do that.
Jean says she's old also, but she said the saying is trick or treat. It's not trick for a treat, which is a good point. I like a focus on grammar.
All right. Ray, I'm 48, grew up trick-or-treating in the Columbia Hallsville area. We never did tricks or jokes. Interesting.
Did you see John's text?
Yes, he screenshotted Branden with a toothpick up his nose. That is a picture I did not need to see today, John.
He said, Branden, stop.
Well, Hannah found me. So it used to be you go trick-or-treating, you had a joke to tell, or you had to do a trick. Like the other trick I did, I would take one of my dad's beer cans. I could stand on a beer can, an empty beer can, with one leg, lift the other leg up, balance on that empty beer can.
No.
Yep.
I need to see this.
Yeah. And then real carefully, you just barely tap the sides of the beer can, and it will collapse. And pull your fingers out, by the way. But yeah, I could
see it.
Let's do it. Find me an empty beer can.
I actually have a case of beer at my desk.
You do. I've been wondering about that.
Yeah, I can do it. And then the thing I did, the stupid human trick I did to get that bit.
To get all the ladies.
Hey, lady, I can't figure out why I'm still single. Did you see what Rathert did on the video feed on Wake Up Mid Missouri on YouTube? So when I go trick or treat, people say, "Okay, what's your joke or your trick?" And my joke was the chicken and the egg joke.
Oh, seriously?
I still love to be able to tell that joke here on the show.
Yeah, I bet you would.
Because it's not a bad joke.
Yes, it is. That's why you want to tell it. Come on.
No, I want to tell it because it's funny, because where people's heads go. So the trick I would do is I could take a toothpick. I don't even know how this ever came to be. I could take a toothpick and put it in my mouth and put it into
and impale yourself.
Free nose piercing.
Ugh.
You cheated.
A little bit. I can make my nose dance by putting the toothpick.
Lord. How bored did you have to be to discover this trick?
I told you we were poor growing up, man. When you're poor. And it was used.
Which end went up the nose and which one went in the mouth?
Then you always got to mark it. But when you're poor, you have to find ways to entertain yourself. Like my brother, we'd put him in the dryer and turn it on because that's just what you did.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Good Lord.
Oh, I did see my son had my daughter in a laundry basket dangling her over the stairs. And I was like, no, please. But we've all done that.
Kick her down the steps.
Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe not.
Kids, don't try this at home. Maybe we should quit laughing so much and move forward. Okay, good. Let's do that. Fox is here. Coming up at 8 o'clock. And then 8:10. Folks that are afraid to talk, and rightly so, I think. You saw what happened over the weekend, right?
Luke Bryan puts Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on stage. Luke Bryan gets eviscerated on Twitter. This is political discourse. It's crazy. Erin Norman's written an article about this. Hear what she has to say coming up at 8:10.
And if Ron Johnson does not understand that, if he understands giving tax breaks for private planes more than he understands making sure that seniors who've worked all their lives are able to retire with dignity and respect.
Is that Obama?
He's not the person who's thinking about you and knows you and sees you, and he should not be your senator from Wisconsin.
Holy cow, I've never heard our former president, Barack Obama, that lively, that angry. He's mad. He's angry. And maybe part of the problem. Good morning. Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert, joined by Stephanie Bell, Mr. John Marsh, producer Hannah, and Andy Humphrey is in for Brian Houseworth today. Glad you could be here. We saw some of this horrible, what happens in politics when it just continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse. As a matter of fact, we know what happened a couple of days ago. And this just bothers me. Luke Bryan, country music star, is on stage doing a concert in Florida. He invites Governor Ron DeSantis on stage.
We're going to have some fun, and we're going to raise some money tonight for the great state of Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Governor Ron DeSantis.
So Luke Bryan, country music star, does he judge one of those TV shows too? Feel like a judge? No.
The Voice.
The Voice?
Does he?
So Luke Bryan, he brings Governor Ron DeSantis on stage, and you heard him say, hey, we're going to have some fun, we're going to make some money for charity. Luke Bryan gets eviscerated on Twitter from progressives who just wet the bed because he invited the governor of Florida, and the guy was raising money for hurricane relief. Luke Bryan, to his credit, he gets on Twitter, basically says, I don't respond to y'all on stupid stuff like this, but I'm going to now. Basically, screw you. We're doing this for charity, and I was raised, hey, when you're in a situation to help people, you do it. But I'm wondering, is it stuff like this that people get afraid to talk about their political ideations, whether you're talking about a potential candidate, whether you're talking about the president, whether you're talking about an amendment issue? I want to bring in Erin Norman. Erin Norman, Lee Family Fellow and senior messaging strategist at the State Policy Network, did a really cool piece, and I love this. Matter of fact, I think Breitbart picked it up. The Drudge Report, and also The Hill. It's called Why Americans Are Concealing Their True Political Beliefs. Erin, we want to welcome you into the show. So why is it? Why do we get in some situations where people just don't want to talk about their political beliefs?
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad you asked that. What people are doing is they are shying away from the divisiveness that we get in politics today. It's no longer enough to say, I disagree with that, or have a civil debate. Very quickly, the situation jumps to the one that you described, where immediately people go to, you're a bad person, how could you possibly do this? You're terrible for having beliefs that are just different than their own. And a lot of times those beliefs are misunderstood because of how they're characterized in the mainstream media. There are only a few narratives that flow around, and people kind of latch onto them.
So one of those narratives, like if I am in favor of clamping down on illegal immigration, I'm painted as a racist. That's
one of them.
Yeah, that's one of them. Or if you're this, it means you're that. If you're this, it means you're that. None of which is true, but people get into situations where then they're kind of maybe afraid to talk about some of this stuff. So is this in effect in what you're saying in your piece, why Americans are concealing their true political beliefs? Like, is it that simple? People are saying one things in their circles, in their social circles, but then maybe like at the poll 8 days from now, voting differently than what they've been talking about?
Exactly. And there's a really good new study from a think tank called Populous that measured this specific phenomenon. They had a really clever methodology where they were able to survey people and ask them about a number of contentious issues, and then also to get a gauge of what they felt privately about those issues. And you had really big differences on a number of topics that are hot button issues right now, whether or not America is at its core racist, the effectiveness or usefulness of masking to stop the spread of COVID-19, things that have been big fights. And what they found is that people are concealing their true opinions in public, but that those opinions still manifest, those private opinions still manifest themselves, such as at Election Day, or if something's an issue or a policy seems like it has a lot of support but never takes off, it's because maybe it has less support than it seems.
Well, and I think this is really interesting, and it goes back to something I think that we've talked about a lot here is the polling. And so Trafalgar talks about submerged voters and how when called, a lot of people won't respond accurately or won't respond at all to people asking them questions about how they're going to vote. Do you think this is in line with the populist study?
Absolutely. And that is a well-documented phenomenon within polling, that certain groups of people respond less. There's less trust. And so pollsters are trying to correct for that. It's a known entity and they're working on it. But at this point in time, everything is just a little bit experimental in horse race polling or ballot test polling. So it's one thing to look at the polls and say, great, I know what's going to happen. But in reality, you probably don't. It's probably off by 3 or 4 points.
Let me ask you this, Erin. So I'm going back to the SCOTUS decision earlier this year as it related to abortion. What we saw, there was a red wave, and then all of a sudden there wasn't a red wave anymore. And we saw specifically conservative politicians start to kind of fudge on the issue of abortion. They would ask your thoughts on abortion, and instead of giving their opinion on abortion, they would say things like, it's a state's issue. Or instead of saying, I'm against it, any circumstances. There was a lot of tempered language from a lot of Republicans around abortion. And maybe I'm stretching, but to me that's, let's say they always believed that there was not a big issue with abortion, but they had to do it because that's what the party line said, right? I'm a Republican. This is what I'm supposed to say about abortion, even though I'm not feeling that passionately about it. But now maybe they feel more open to really talk about how they feel about some of these issues. Or am I stretching? Am I way off base?
There were definitely ebbs and flows as that decision came down from the Supreme Court. It's a little hard to tell exactly the effect that had versus just the general economic conditions. So gas prices dipped a little bit in the summer. Things looked like they were going to get better at the same time that decision came down. And so picking apart what was really driving things became difficult. It's fair to say that as the Republicans are on the upswing now in the polls, and you see as we get closer to Election Day, and it looks like they're going to do pretty well, that some of the fear of masking those opinions drops because it looks pretty good for them at this point.
Yeah, and so I don't know if, like a lot of the Republicans, they felt like they could now be more honest about their opinions on abortion, or if it was just politically fortuitous for them to do something like that. Our guest, Erin Norman, written a great piece. You can find it on the Drudge Report and The Hill. It's called Why Americans Are Concealing Their True Political Beliefs. She's joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Right. There was a great nugget in the populist study where they asked about how much influence, or do people think that parents should have more influence over public school curriculums? And there was a big gap for millennials, who are now, I think we all think of them as this youth generation, but they're now pushing 40 and have kids. And so there's a huge gap there where publicly they're more likely to say, no, parents shouldn't be involved in that more liberal, let the experts take care of it mentality. And then privately, they're 26 points more likely to say that parents should have influence over public school curriculum. So there are real generation gaps on some of these contentious issues, but things change as people move through different life stages and encounter different things.
That's interesting. So the millennials, now that they're experiencing some of these important things, are going, oh, yeah, what happens in the schools does matter. It's not just people complaining about, a cross-dressing story hour or something like that, where I just thought everybody was being mean. Now that I've moved into the age where I'm a parent and I have kids going to the schools, oh my gosh, this stuff really matters now. And so they're changing their tune or being more honest, I guess, about how they feel.
And it's not just millennials. We looked at the 18 to 28 age gap, and there was a statement tested in the study that CEOs should take a public stand on controversial issues. And publicly, that 18 to 29 group, 37% of them said, yes, CEOs should take a public stand on controversial issues. And privately, that drops down to just 25%. Even the public figure there is a minority. And what we're seeing is that because people are afraid or hesitant to talk about their true beliefs, vocal minorities end up driving the narrative. And the best way to combat that is to be open to people with different point of views and to be open to having respectful debates. So people realize that their views aren't that different than the average American.
It kind of reminds me of the famous line, if you're 25 and you're not a liberal, you have no heart. And if you're 35 and you're not a conservative, you have no brain. Someone reminded me of that this weekend. And I was like, yeah, your views do tend to change as you get off mom and dad's payroll and you have to start paying for some stuff yourself, or you become a parent yourself. I think people do tend to get more conservative. But is there any discussion about location? Because I think Branden mentioned the pachyderm meeting, but obviously, we get comfortable, we get around people, we think we have assumptions and maybe, be and feel more comfortable and are open there. Was there any discussion about, where people are more comfortable or how and when they do feel open to sharing their true beliefs?
There was a little bit of data on this in the piece I wrote for The Hill, where I pulled in some work from psychologists that say when you're with solid friends, true friends, people in your life you really trust, that is the best place to have these open discussions. That's where debate and information sharing and persuasion is going to happen. But what we see today is that a lot of people don't have those solid relationships. They have relationships that are really surface level and based only on, hey, I have fun with you, you don't challenge me, this isn't uncomfortable, but there's absolutely no room for challenge or growth in those types of relationships. So where you can have those discussions and really be yourself and talk about your true beliefs are where you have really solid friends, family, relationships in your life. And that's something that is less common than it used to be, unfortunately.
Or it's like there's some jokes, like I have a good friend, Stuart, and there's some jokes and some things I'd say around my good friend, Stuart, that I would never repeat in front of my other good friend, Stephanie Bell, because it's different, different audiences, and I'm more comfortable. But that's different. That's jokes. It's not politics.
I think she's also saying we're not going to have reasonable discourse in places like Twitter, right? Probably
not. Because there are no relationships there. The trust isn't there. The duty to be civil isn't there in the way it is with people in your real life that you see at the mailbox or at the bus stop every day.
Yeah. Fascinating. Erin Norman, Lee Family Fellow and Senior Messaging Strategist at the State Policy Network, has a piece, Why Americans Are Concealing Their True Political Beliefs, picked up by The Hill, also the Drudge Report, and I imagine other places. Fascinating read. Before we let you go, I'm just curious. We're 8 days out from the election, and I don't know what the big issues are exactly where you live, what congressional district. I don't know any of that stuff about you, so I'm not asking who you're voting for. My question to you before we let you go, Erin, is do you know absolutely when you walk into the polls 8 days from now, do you know how you are voting on every single thing where you live?
I do, yes.
Okay, all right. That's all we needed to know. Erin, thank you so much for joining us here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Thanks for having me.
All right, fun. It's a great piece. Coming up 5 minutes from now, Morning Bell, business news, little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you. What do you have for us this morning?
We have a lot of little pieces of news, a lot of things to watch this week, so it's going to be kind of business news rapid fire.
All right, rapid fire business news. That's
And this is the PBS NewsHour. We're what your grandma is talking about when she says, I saw this on the news. With the midterms less than 2 weeks away, Republicans appear to be surging, with a strong closing message from candidates who have gone from underdogs to stars of the Republican Party.
So when pop culture starts picking up that, hey, Dems are going to lose their rear ends in the midterms in 8 days, then you start, at least I do, I start to feel just a little bit better. Good morning, 8:28, time for the Morning Bell business news with that little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
Good thing we're doing rapid fire business news today.
I know, I messed up there, man.
No, but Friday, I figured with all that Hannah likes to talk about McDonald's with the adult Happy Meals and the McRib, McDonald's stock hit an all-time high. So they've been doing these like fun things and it's paying off for them. So I love that. Other news. This week, we expect the Fed to raise their rates 75 basis points Wednesday, so we'll be watching for that. Friday, we get the October jobs report, so we'll be watching for that too. And Tuesday, New York is implementing a new law where if they post any jobs, they have to post a salary range. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't like that at all because I don't like it when the government says, if you're a private employer, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. Now, as a job seeker, I might find it helpful occasionally to see what those were posted.
What would stop you from posting just like 10,000 to 200,000, depending on qualifications?
Here's the range, man.
I'm sure there's something in the law that says you have to like actually make a reasonable effort. I think it is helpful. I mean, you got to be on the same page. And as an employer, it's terrible to, to interview someone and waste your time when you're not on the same page, and same for the employee, right?
I think that should be the first question, even as if you're looking for a job, talk to these people. Even before you send in the stuff, what does the job pay?
But it should be up to the employer and the employee, not to the government. I agree.
I like it. All right, coming up just a few minutes from now here on the show, some odds and ends stuff, and then we're going to get into leftovers, and then it's the Gary Nolan Show. Still a lot of cool things happening this morning.
Do you remember this? This is an obscure one, but on the side of the box, I remember this on my Superman costume, it actually said, "Do not attempt to fly." They printed that as a warning because kids were putting it on and going off the roofs. You know. I love the idea of the kid who's stupid enough to think he actually is Superman, but smart enough to check that box before he goes off the roof. Wait, let me see if it says anything about me being Superman. Oh, wait a second here.
Of course, Jerry Seinfeld. Good morning. Welcome into the show. Weather tonight for Trick or Treat should be pretty good. So I know it kind of looks right now. And drizzle should be coming to an end probably before lunchtime today. And some sunshine, I guess, about, 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight when the sun goes down. It'll be about 60 degrees for Trick or Treat. And by the way, daylight saving time this coming weekend comes to an end.
Where's Brad Trinago when you need him?
We'll do our regular call into State Representative Chuck Basie, who for, I guess, 8 years now has been working on the Brad Trinago Act of 2015. That's how long, 7 years we've been working on that thing.
Well, the Senate passed something, right? And so it could be going away next year. Is that what I'm hearing?
So and that was in the U.S. Senate, where they did do something that would make it. The thing with Missouri and daylight saving time is you got to get all the other states. You got to get Arkansas, and I guess Oklahoma, and Kansas, and Iowa, and Illinois. And Tennessee and Kentucky also touch us a little bit. So you got to get all these states on the same page. I could care less. I think it's silly that people throw such a big fit about it every year.
You don't have small children.
I don't have small children. So there is that. I know people say, well, you know, that, and isn't it like after we switch our clocks, that there's an increased number of heart attacks, increased number of car accidents? I think there's a lot of things actually that you can trace to, that you can look at saying, hey, look at what happens after we switch the clocks. And I get it. People are really passionate about it. I'm not.
It's just annoying.
Yeah, it's annoying, but it's. Yeah. So here's the thing. When my first job in radio was in Delphi, Indiana, where actually there's a high profile case that's been happening. You're familiar with this, Hannah?
Oh, yeah. I'm a big true crime nerd.
Okay.
And I'm anxiously awaiting this morning's press conference from those guys.
So that was my first job in radio, Carroll County, Indiana, when we did news the old-fashioned way. You had to walk into the courthouse, walk to the police station, get all this stuff. But there's a high-profile case, a couple of missing girls, been going on for several years at this point.
Well, so there were two girls, I want to say they were like 11 or so. They were actually murdered 5 years ago, and they have not been able to find the person who did it. There was almost no evidence in the case, but they announced a couple days ago that they have arrested someone in the case, and they have a press conference this morning. I believe they're announcing the charges that he's facing, or they're officially naming him as a suspect or something like that.
So that town where that's happening, that was where my first job in radio was. More pigs than people and fields of... our radio station was almost literally in a cornfield. And where we were in Indiana, like some counties did take part in daylight saving times and some didn't. And it was really odd, but one cool thing about it is because of where Delphi, Monticello, Indiana was, like halfway in between Indianapolis and Chicago, you'd get both cable feeds, and Indianapolis was on Eastern Time, Chicago was on Central Time. So like Cheers, you could watch twice in one night. That's how long ago this was. The Cosby Show, you could watch that twice in one night. But the other thing that I always thought was fascinating is every year when I'd take my old tape recorder out and go talk to a farmer about daylight saving time, about is Indiana ever going to get on board, and you'd have the farmer saying, well, I'm in farming and I got to, we need the more daylight here and we need it there. And I would try to explain, like, we ain't taking the daylight away. Everybody knows this, right? It's still going to be the same amount of daylight. And not everybody knows that. I'm for real. And I think even here, there's some people that don't understand. Like, we're not just filling up a meter, put in more daylight. It's
Yeah, well, and I mean, for folks too, like, I mean, we're becoming a more global economy as well. And you're talking like county to county and, just across the U.S., whether people participate. Well, it's different also internationally. So, you're used to like a certain country being, +6 or +8 or whatever, and they have different rules. So it's a headache now that, we all communicate more regularly. I would just rather know the time is the time is the time.
Yeah. Heck, I say we even get rid of time zones here in America.
Oh, boy.
No.
All right, just a shot. Welcome into the show. Diane C. Stephanie Bell is here. She's decked out in her Halloween outfit today. You can see
costume, maybe?
Costume, outfit, uniform.
It's got a cute USA patch on the back, see?
I tried to
have like combat boots, which are coming back in style. Can you see them?
I tried to tell Stephanie this morning that we probably could have convinced you, Brandon, that she was just wearing a new outfit. And you probably would have believed that it was like the latest fashion trend.
I probably would have.
True.
I know.
I'd be like, oh, that's what they're doing in Degeneration Z now, huh?
I am a millennial.
I'm sorry.
Elder millennial.
Degeneration millennial. Thank you, John. I like it. He's always so polite to you because he'll look at you and he won't laugh, but then he's like, that's pretty good. Yeah. Roy Blunt was in town over the weekend, or actually in Columbia. The last thing that he said walking out, so he's done. He'll be done, January 20th. He'll be done in his official duty. Eric Schmidt, our current Attorney General, will be sworn in as the next senator. Josh Hawley becomes a senior senator. But Roy Blunt speaking at Mizzou over the weekend, giving a lecture, kind of talking about his time in office and what he would do next. I don't know what he'll do next. What do you do? Become a lobbyist, spokesperson for some kind of lobbying firm?
Yeah, in public policy. I mean, I think he's going to continue probably on the victory lap for a little while longer. They've been naming things after him and celebrating his service, and I think he'll be doing that for a bit.
I did not, or maybe I did know this, but I forget until it comes up every time. In 1984, Blunt was elected as Missouri's first Republican Secretary of State in over 50 years. It'd been the 30s. Man.
An incredible career.
Here was the last thing he said when he left the audience on Saturday at Mizzou. He said, quote, "It would be better to leave this place a little bit early than to stay late. I love doing it."
Because you said that to Joe Biden.
Joe was at it again this weekend, by the way. He got fact-checked on Twitter.
Is it what I'm thinking of?
Is it
It could be any number of things, really.
Yeah, he was saying something about his the Inflation Reduction Act, which you know what the Inflation Reduction Act doesn't do?
Doesn't reduce inflation.
He was talking about something like that, and people on Twitter, on the Elon Musk Twitter, politely got on there and gave him some free fact checks. Which one are you talking about?
His claim about states.
Oh,
about 52 states or something.
54.
Oh, God.
Yeah. If you're the president of the United States, shouldn't you know?
It's not a good look.
Well, but you know what? So what? So John Fetterman's not a good talker. He can still hold office. So Joe Biden doesn't know that there's only 50 states in America. It doesn't mean he can't hold office. That's what those people say. So he doesn't know how many number of states there are. So what? Who cares? Oh, gosh.
By the way, if they do, that means, not a joke, everybody, that's why we were defeated in 2018 when they tried to do it. We went to 54 states.
Then
Today, the most common price of gas in America is $3.39, down from over $5 when I took office.
It's $5 a gallon.
That's a nope. That's wrong.
Meanwhile, the diesel reserve has 18 days
Y'all, this is a personal problem for me. We need to figure this out. Do we have a plan of action for this?
I don't.
I got nothing.
I don't drive a diesel.
Can someone tow? I just need like a tractor and we'll just tow them behind it.
What do you think the tractor runs off of?
Oh, no.
Get some horses.
Electric. We need some. Oh, the horse-drawn carriages are coming back to Columbia. Did you see that?
Well,
That's
yeah,
cool.
because have you seen gas prices?
I think that's really sweet. Other cities do that. I've thought it's so romantic. They do it in like Christmas movies. No one's ever taken me on a horse-drawn carriage. I think it would be cute.
Chris Bell, if you're listening.
Right?
That's what Stephanie wants for Christmas.
There's a great piece, St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Despite new battery factory, Missouri's getting a battery factory in St. Louis. Millions of dollars for the development of batteries for electric vehicles. But I think they're kind of taking a jab. The writer of the article, Kurt Erickson, taking a jab at Parson because, thank goodness, for the most part. Now, there is an effort underway. MoDOT is installing, I believe, they're in the process of starting to put in more electric charging stations across roads in all of Missouri, despite, I think last I checked, less than 5% of vehicles in Missouri were electric vehicles. They're taking a dig at Parson because we're bringing in this new battery factory into Missouri, but nobody in the state. So there's not this big movement underway in the state. For example, like City of Columbia, electric buses, propane-powered buses, this and that. But the state, they're not pushing. They're not saying, hey, all of our state vehicles need to be run by electricity. By the way, did you see this? The Dodge Challenger and Dodge Charger, for sure. So we'd heard a couple of months ago they weren't going to be making those muscle cars anymore. The Dodge Challenger and Charger, they were still going to make them, but not with gasoline engines. And that's almost like the creator of those Christmas specials dying. The person who created those great Christmas specials, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, and
that person is
Jules
Bass. And they're not claymation, they're stop-motion animation.
Stop-motion animation. So they're not making the Dodge Challenger and Charger. Well, they're still going to make them, except it won't be a combustion engine. It's going to be electric.
Are they the ones that they put the stereo system in that it plays music or plays the engine sound? I think that'd be good.
Which blows me away. And you can get those. They have those sound systems. As a matter of fact, I think the Hummer H3 has one. You can determine the sound inside your car. So if it's an electric car, but you want it to sound like a Dodge Charger, you can get that throaty V8 kind of throttle.
That's like the equivalent of like car catfishing or something.
It's like when they pumped in like crowd noise during professional sports games that were televised during COVID when nobody was allowed in.
You do realize if we run out of diesel, nobody's going to be going anywhere because diesel trucks deliver gas to your stations.
Oh, no.
Nobody will be eating because diesel trucks deliver my food to Schulte's and Mosier's. Coming up 5 minutes from now, I'm done.
We're just going to bail out of that depressing factoid.
Hey, listen, when I'm a guy, man, when I'm done, I'm done. I'm done. Coming up 5 minutes from now.
They do, that means, not a joke, everybody. That's why we were defeated in 2018 when they tried to do it. We went to 54 states.
Maybe he comes by it honestly.
And by
because there was this several years ago.
To every corner of the United States. I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go.
Not only did he say, that's Barack Obama, 57 states. But I got to get to one more. So he's doubling down on the 58 states, 57 states.
Bill says, what 3 states did Biden forget from Obama's 57?
Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Here's a big old serving of leftovers. Enjoy.
All right, leftovers. Some of the things we didn't get time to get to on the show this morning. So we like to open up the refrigerator and see what we have in the way of leftovers. Steph, what you got?
Oh, I have some friends doing some fun stuff in Jefferson City tonight. In my old neighborhood, I grew up on Greenberry, and I guess on the corner of Greenberry and Dixon, there'll be a Santa's workshop with a Santa passing out candy canes, and I think that's so fun for Halloween.
I love that. We suggested that Stephanie Bell should go as Santa Claus for Halloween, because you know who Stephanie Bell loves?
Not Santa
Claus.
I just think that's great. My sister, there's a bar in Nashville that's Santa all the time, and I think every city should celebrate Christmas 24/7. So if you're feeling in the mood and you're not a real Halloween person like me, get to Greenberry.
I've seen TikTok accounts where they post Christmas-related content all year long, and the whole purpose is just to give you the warm fuzzies that you feel on Christmas.
Oh, I like that.
This, while we were talking a little bit about the electric cars and this electric car battery factory coming to Missouri, coal mine. This was in Germany. It was a couple days ago, but a coal mine. They had to demolish a neighboring wind farm to boost their energy supply. They're like, well, we could get more coal, but the dang wind things are on top. The wind turbines are on top. So they took out the wind turbines.
So when I was in high school, I went to Boone County, West Virginia for a week-long mission trip, and we went to this old coal mining town. And at that time, Obama was in office and had, basically shut down all the coal mines. And it was kind of an interesting experience to be in a town where basically everyone worked in the coal mines. So basically the whole town was out of work because Obama had shut down the coal mines, and just everybody was poor and out of work. And it was really sad. The whole town was just run down because the coal mine had shut down.
Hannah, you got anything for leftovers? Pretty good over there?
I'm doing okay.
All right, Marsh, what do you got?
Ew.
Oh.
Another reason not to have a dog. Ugh.
Man. So this dog's just out in the backyard and shows up at the back sliding glass door with like a big old bone in his mouth, and it's like a femur from a human? Gosh. Also, this Politico, there's straight up an article in Politico, which is kind of a political publication, directed at